After the midterm elections on November 6th, progressives everywhere were fired up at the prospect of Barbara Lee potentially becoming House Speaker. But when we learned that she didn't want to be House Speaker and when she was instead planning to run for a different leadership position, we adapted, even if we were disappointed, and we accepted that yes, her running for this leadership position would one day position her to run for speaker. So we can wait a couple of years if it'll pay off, if it means we'll get Barbara Lee eventually as House Speaker, which would be phenomenal. But guess what? We couldn't even get the bare minimum because House Democrats voted and they rejected Barbara Lee. And as Sarah D. Wire of the Los Angeles Times reports, California Representative Barbara Lee on Wednesday lost her bid to become the first black woman elected to a House leadership position and the first woman to lead the House Democratic Caucus. By a vote of 123 to 113, Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York won the race to lead the caucus for the next 2 years. Both are members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Jeffries was just elected to a fourth term in Congress and is a co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, which helps Democrats develop their messaging. His entry into the race for the fifth highest leadership post was seen by some as bypassing an unwritten rule that members rack up more experience before seeking one of the coveted jobs. Lee had taken a more traditional path of holding successive leadership positions over more than 2 decades in Washington. Several Democratic members, including Adam B. Schiff of Burbank and James E. Clyburn of South Carolina, the most senior African-American member in the House leadership, refused to say who they voted for in the secret ballot. Lee said she felt, quote, some disappointment only with the institutional barriers that I recognize that were out there during this campaign. I'm really disappointed in that, knowing that was an uphill battle. So make no mistake about it, this is the message that the Democratic Party is sending to you again. If you're a progressive and you want your values represented in the leadership of our party, go fuck yourself. If you're a black woman and you're one of the most loyal voting demographics to our party and you consistently secure our victory and you want someone who looks like you represented, if you want more visibility for black women in leadership within the Democratic Party, go fuck yourself. We're not going to give that to you either. You can't have what you want because we have to make sure that we don't allow people who are even remotely progressive to get anywhere near leadership because that makes our donors feel really uncomfortable. That's the message they are choosing to send to us. And it's not the first time they sent us this message. They're choosing to give it to the guy who's been in control of the Democratic Party's messaging, which, I mean, if you're in control of that, you're obviously doing a terrible job since the Democratic Party still doesn't really have a coherent message. And also, they allowed him to leapfrog Barbara Lee, who's been working her way towards leadership, trying to go through the ranks, trying to be a good Democrat, and she's still got the cold shoulder from Democrats. They can't help themselves. They see enthusiasm at the grassroots level for anyone, and they immediately, instinctively think we have to defeat that person. I mean, the party is a fucking joke. The Democratic Party is nothing more than a shell of what it used to be. They have been corrupted and they are rotten to the core, and this is another example of that. Now, as Ro Khanna puts it, our caucus today denied Barbara Lee the honor she deserved of being chair, but the petty politics of members of Congress will never be able to deny her her place in history. She towers above those who rejected her. Yeah, that's exactly it. And this is a vote that was done in secret. So we don't even know which cowards voted against Barbara Lee, who was clearly the superior option, who the grassroots supported. You know, if Democrats resisted Republicans with even half the level of fiercity and the temerity that they resist progressives with, we would be in a lot different of a place right now as a country. But instead, they use all their efforts to push back against progressives while letting Republicans steamroll them. Democrats are absolutely useless. They're just there to keep the seats warm so Republicans don't occupy those seats. That's basically all they're good for. To expect any sort of policy that's progressive from them, at this point it just seems like a joke. They're just seat warmers. That's all they are.
Would you be pushing for things like single payer, more of the progressive agenda?
Well, I'm a pragmatic progressive. I think that we all want to move toward universality of health care coverage, but we have to start by strengthening the Affordable Care Act, by lowering the high cost of prescription drugs, and by making sure that we can protect people with pre-existing conditions. Those were our promises to the electorate. That's what helped us win the majority. We've got to fight for the people, specifically on the issues that we have discussed with the American people as part of our closing argument.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.